Hello, hello. I am back here to chat with Rene about creativity, self-care. Um, and I think today we're going to finish up our martyr topic and then we're going to move on to happiness. So let me see if I can find her and get her on. There she is.
Hey. Hi, it's dark now. Happy
Yeah,
Monday. Thank you for switching.
yeah, my pleasure. It actually works well for me. It's a good
Okay.
day.
When do I get to hear your Hildegard song?
I'm going to be performing my Hildegard song on December 18th, and
Wow.
it will be filmed. So
Wow.
I'll probably post it unless I completely bomb. I'll post it on here probably, or
Yes,
at
you
least
should
a clip
you
of it.
should. Well, if you don't post it, send me the whole thing.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
of
I'm
course.
excited
Good
for you.
lighting. Nice. Nice job.
Uh-oh. Now, I just have this something happened to my phone, and I usually have the light on all the time because I use it when I teach, and I never want it to fade out. And I don't know
Uh-huh.
what happened. It's now deciding it wants to fade out. Anyway, I'll just keep my finger on it. Anyway, I think we said we were going to talk more about martyrdom, um,
Yeah.
and we can. We said it could be a subject unto itself. Um, but I was just thinking, we talk about so many millions of things. I wish we could tie it together somehow or give a basis, like a building block kind of logical sequential thing, but I don't know if we can. I don't
Well,
know.
I'm sure that we can. I don't know if we can do it right now on the fly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Just
but
so that
yeah, I mean,
people aren't confused. Not that I confuse everybody all the time. I'm always all over the place. So, but yes, last week we talked a lot about um, self-sacrifice and what it looks like, and then you and I passed around the Shel Silverstein thing, and
yes. Oh, yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah,
so I
I
think
love that.
in my grandpa's generation, on his, I think I told you, I may not have, on his epitaph, on his tombstone, it says something about his fellow man,
Hmm.
husband, father, and something of his fellow man.
Hmm.
I have to look it up, something like that. And he wrote a beautiful poem about success that I had like on my closet door for 20 years, about your success being reaching out to your fellow man. Well,
Hmm.
then come to find out, people don't even know that saying, your fellow man. Obviously, it's out of date. It should be your fellow human, and it
Right.
shouldn't necessarily be fellow because that's also masculine. But that concept kind of went away for a while, and the whole Shel Silverstein thing in the 70s was more or less a hippie. He was a hippie. Shel Silverstein, the writer, he was coming off of the 60s hippie era, trying to promote love. And now here we are in our self-care menagerie, everything's about self-care, making fun of how the poor giving tree just pretty much died, gave until she could give no more. So
Yeah.
I just was thinking, culturally speaking, uh, of course there's anachronisms, and we look back on, even what's his name, not Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau, and I make fun of him all the time because he had his, mom and sister taking care of him at Walden Pond. He wasn't doing his own laundry, he wasn't making his own food, right? So I
Mhm.
make fun of that, and so now um, I'm taking issue with the fact that we're making fun of poor Shel Silverstein. I don't know why, because it was my era, and I'm part of it. Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
what is it about our consciousness collectively that takes issue with issues like that, and the changing the thought form, changing what we accept as okay? Because I personally don't think it's okay that we don't feel responsible for one another like they did in the Depression. I don't think it's okay, and
Yeah.
I don't know what the better word for responsible is, but um,
Yeah. So there's so much to unpack in what you're saying. So first is the Shel Silverstein thing for a little bit of context. So we're talking about The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, which is a story about a tree who basically gives itself until it's a stump to this little boy. And you know, I grew up reading that book and was so one of the most beloved books of my childhood, for sure, like top 5. And I, you know, I grew up being very moved by that story. And I still think there is a lot of beauty in that story.
Okay.
I think the revisioning of it is very clever and very timely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think it's like a rewrite or a contradiction of what Shel Silverstein was originally trying to express, because I think they're sort of two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, I think on the positive side, that story is a little bit like the positive side of surrender that I talked about last week, where you're giving of yourself to the extent that there is no self, right? There's like a surrender of the self to the extent that you almost subsume the self. And this is like a higher spiritual goal. This is not like a thing that the average person necessarily wants or needs to pursue. So there's that side of things that I think can be, you could draw that analogy with the Shel Silverstein story. I also think the vast majority of us, myself included, probably look at that story as a maternal metaphor, right? Like who do you see as the tree except your mother, the archetypal mother, right? And so in that sense, the story can be an allegory of modernity, really, because look what we're doing to our mother, the earth, you know, we're doing.
Yeah, I was going to say Gaia. Absolutely. We could take it now to mean that, like we keep taking from her and taking from her.
Certainly. Yeah. And then, you know, there's so many ways. That's the beauty of allegory, right? You can read it so many different ways, and there's so much nuance to it. It's like a diamond with its many facets, you know. Another way you can look at it is not only that, like, we're basically, you know, destroying the earth and the earth is becoming a stump, you know, but that no matter what loss the tree experienced, the tree's happiness, the tree's contentedness or fulfillment was through the act of giving.
Yes, and that's why I mentioned maybe we should talk about happiness, because the trees, you didn't say the tree's happiness, you said the tree's fulfillment. And so, you know, I know that a lot of people are on the pursuit of happiness, but I think happiness is overrated, and I really I don't like to brag when I'm happy, because I think that happiness is short-sighted, and happiness is not the same as contentment. And so everybody wanting to be happy and feel happy all the time tends to short circuit the mission of creativity, right? Which is to be more connected, which has more to do with what Shel Silverstein was saying about self-sacrifice for the sake of others.
Right.
I can't hear what that is. I just hear a noise.
Oh, it's my little man laughing in the background. I'm going to move to the room. He's like, oh, sorry, Mom. I told him I was doing a call. Go ahead. I'm still listening.
Oh, anyway, so I don't know where I was going. I just lost it. Just about happiness versus fulfillment, self-sacrifice, and what true unconditional love is. Because when you're honored to love someone, should it cost you anything? If you're easy to love and it doesn't cost you anything, is it worth less than someone who's hard to love and it costs you a lot? Like, what is the difference between unconditional love, self-sacrifice, martyrdom, you know, like Shel Silverstein's little tree, you know, and what should our mission in life be? To bring ourselves fulfillment or to bring fulfillment to others?
Yeah. I mean, okay, first of all, I totally agree with you about the word happy. That word is meaningless to me, essentially. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, and I match.
You know,
we match. Surprise.
I mean, I'm happy for you if you have a baby or you get married. Or I say, I'm happy for you. That's like the only time I really think I use that word in my life, which is kind of funny because I'm talking about other people. But yeah, happiness to me isn't a thing. It's not, you know, it's not a thing. It's like not a thing I think about in my life. I think about self-actualization, like the you know, fulfilling my reason for being, you know,
growth, evolution.
But I also think of not even in growth terms or like linear terms. I really think of just like embodying my humanity, which to me isn't like oh, I have to reach for this or I have to achieve this. It's like a sinking down into who I am, you know, as a human. And, you know, happiness, you could say happiness is like if there's an up and a down in life, happiness is the top of the hill, and everyone wants to be at the top of the hill, but you can't actually be at the top of the hill all the time. Otherwise that just becomes a flat line, and that's essentially depression, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, so the word is meaningless to me, and it doesn't have a place really in my vocabulary, like my day-to-day vocabulary.
Yeah.
But then I forgot the last thing you said. I was going to make a comment on that as well.
Something about fulfillment, maybe? Something about
that's right. So you said, so do we try to like fulfill ourselves or do we try to serve others? And I would say that there's no difference between the two. Like to me, the true purpose of life, and like everyone has their own iteration of what it is, but if you're fulfilling your purpose, you are both serving yourself and serving others simultaneously. What you're not serving is the small self, like the self that says, I want, you know, 5 glasses of wine right now, or I want, you know, this boyfriend and that boyfriend, or you know, the small self, because that's not even yourself, right? That's the mind just bouncing around like a ping pong ball, having different wants and desires. But to me, there's no separation between self-fulfillment and the fulfillment of serving the collective, because like I always say this, I always say you can't exist in a vacuum. Human beings cannot exist in a vacuum. Not only are we highly social creatures that are designed to be in communities and be of service to the community, to have a place and a role in the community, which gives us a sense of stability, fulfillment, identity, purpose, etc. We're also a part of the web of life. And so no matter what we're doing, we're either masochists, you know, hurting ourselves and the world, or we're doing something that's fulfilling to ourselves and the rest of humanity. And of course, it's not black and white, but those are the ends of the spectrum that I see.
Right. And life is long, so you could ultimately be, you know, a cutter at whatever, 35 or let's say 20, and your life is a mess, and then you get your shit together. And but what you're saying is what I really believe, that if we're all running around chasing, let's say, happiness or monetary success or something on the superficial side, I don't know what else to call it, then we're gonna have a superficial society, because everyone's chasing after that flat line that you're talking about, that really it may not exist in your mind because you're not after it, but the fact that it does exist, then you get to the top of the hill and there's nothing there. Your humanity isn't with you. And you know, the old saying Ubuntu, the African word Ubuntu, means I am because you are. That's what being human is. We can't, we are each other. I can't be a human without you being a human with me. It's that whole interlocking value that I don't know if it's missing. I feel like it was missing for a good long time in my life. In my lifetime, and I'm not going to say, it was from 1984 to 1997, but I definitely see a surge back towards unity and towards that whole idea of the collective. So anyway, if we're all, you know, on our Instagram feeds just wishing we were that person, you know, skydiving with the beautiful husband and whatever, and you're always wishing for the other thing, then you are superficial, and our whole society's gonna be superficial.
Sure. Well, I think, you know, it starts systemically, right? So this is something I think about often, you know, in the corporate world or even in the professional world at large. There's such a focus on the self and the identity of the self, and the self moving kind of like this pawn, you know, on a chessboard. Like the self as the CV sort of thing. Yeah. And so even people who have really good hearts and have really great intentions and want to help improve the world, they're so focused on moving their pawn in the right directions to even just like set themselves up in a good position for, you know, for the basic needs and maybe a little bit more, you know, so what happens is our creativity gets siphoned into, okay, I'm going to focus on my world moving my pawn where it needs to go so that I can support my family, I can, you know, have a decent life, I can pursue some hobbies, whatever. But imagine if we all actually siphoned that energy, or did not siphon that energy away to the self, but rather like made a collective pool of that energy.
Yeah.
I mean, the power of that would be exponential. And I think that to me is really the truth of why we as a society are kind of falling to pieces, mental health wise and whatever.
Right.
We're taking these little bits of energy and we're basically trying to make ourselves exist in vacuums, and we cannot.
No.
And so that, you know, world problems can't get solved because everyone's too distracted with the pawn game, right? To just get their own position filled.
Right, which is why there's that movement, this huge movement. And then, I mean, when I went to college when I was 40, I met some people staying on a buffalo farm, living in a homestead, you know, living like in a big commune. And so that was, you know, 17 years ago. And then I've heard more about the homesteading movement, the tiny home movement, people saying, let's just do the 4-hour work week. I don't want to own things. I just want to have, you know, people trying to change culture's values by the movement of simplicity, which is a little bit like your thing, your mission, which is to simplify and slow the fuck down. Because you're going to push to have however much money in the bank and to have this, that, and the other thing. And it's still not going to be what you need or what no one needs ultimately, because it's going to lack connection. It's going to lack that depth.
Exactly.
So, anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say, beyond that, you know, that's kind of the monetary and the time side and the energy side, but there's also the community side. So I think of it as like a masculine feminine thing, or yin yang. So there's the masculine, where we're burning ourselves out working and accumulating and whatever. And then the positive masculine being like giving ourselves space, giving ourselves time, the 4-hour work week, whatever. And then the feminine side is like what we talked about before, where I talked about walking the wool and the women sitting and singing, and they've got the wool like marinated in urine and they're like working it out, you know. We are literally, our nervous systems are missing the opportunities for those kinds of interactions, whether it's singing or just sitting around shooting the shit or sitting around, you know, cross stitching or whatever. Our nervous systems don't get to sit in groups of people and don't get to just marinate in the sense of safety and love and being held, you know, that you get in a community. I'm really excited actually, because I'm going to, in the new year, January 14th or so, something, I'm going to, a retreat in Northern California led by Ken Weaver, who I mentioned, I think, in the last time we talked about this. It's all weaving, and it's just learning how to weave.
Oh, you're gonna do that.
Yeah, Sisters of the Loom. I cannot wait. This is exactly the kind of thing that I want to create, you know, in Simple Wild Free, but also just in my own life, and to promote the work of other women doing this too, because I think it's so important for us to simply just be sitting around in circles for the, you know, you could talk about all the spiritual reasons, the whatever, the mental health, but truly for me, it's like my nervous system just wants to be in a circle of women. You know what I mean?
No,
so,
I do. I love that.
Yeah, that's my addition.
The closest thing I can think of would just be like the Europeans, like when we go over to London, and we went to Croatia with Rosie, and we were all on vacation, but even when they're not on vacation and we're in London and they're coming home from work, when they get together for a drink, it's not 2 hours. It's hours and hours and hours. And my nervous system and Jim's nervous system, we clock out at 3.5 hours. We can't sit anymore and just sit. We just can't. But they're going to go on till midnight. So they've got 6 hours, you know. We've only got half that in us. So there's a huge difference, I think, Northern American wise, because not that I know anything, but I know Jordan spent a lot of time in the South, in Mexico, in Nicaragua, in Argentina, and the sitting around vibe, it just makes my skin crawl, but it's part of life. And so taking off 3 days a week now from teaching and from working on whatever I work on. Like usually I'm writing a book, or I'm working all the time and I love it. But just being part of a family again, and the hours passing by with the baby, and now with the new baby, and just doing dinner, and then just doing dishes, and then just sitting and talking. I haven't done the whole sit down and talk to people unless they're over for vacation or for a family reunion in years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in fact, when I did have children, we had a computer table and it sat like 3 kids. Then we had another table and we were always just doing something. A very productive household over here. So, shifting that and trying to reset my nervous system, I haven't done any research on it, but I know that it's definitely a new concept for me, that to reset my nervous system without wine, or a couple glasses of wine or whatever. But that's, I think, what we default to, is we just take a glass of wine to relax. But my mom used to, because she's a 70s lady hippie, she used to have women's circles and pottery days, and they would just sit there for hours. So it's not all entirely lost yet, I don't think.
No, I think it's not systemic. So there's a system in the machine of the system and what the system is propagating. And then there's what people naturally are attracted to or drawn to. And then there's kind of that constant like friction between the two and what's available to people based on their lives. And, in America, in the United States of America, I think, we're really addicted to adrenaline. We don't even know how to exist in silence and space, right? So first there's the mental, like the story of, oh, I need to be productive and I need to be doing something or whatever. But then even when we eradicate that story, our nervous system is still in a state of like activity, which is it's a low grade fight or flight. It's like emotional facilitation that makes it difficult for us to be like with those Europeans, for instance, and actually relax and be, and so being with children helps. And drinking a glass of wine or a glass of beer or whatever can help you to open your channels, to get more in the present moment, to kind of turn off that productivity thing, that like, the coffee mindset, what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, why did our workforce need to be caffeinated? Like, what if we never had coffee? What would the world look like? It would be very different.
And sometimes you and I talk so much about self-care, and I always want to qualify it as you do, that it's definitely not necessarily
supposed to be ready.
Yeah, at 6. I'm on a call.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So the self-care conversation that we have regularly, we always qualify that this type of self-care, where you're going to, take an hour and light a candle and rub lotion or do a meditation, all those things, we always quantify that not everyone's at a place where they can do that, because I don't want to be judgmental of the people that work 2 jobs, even in America. But the difference in maybe I'm suggesting the difference in the other countries that my kids have visited, like Nepal and Thailand, and like you were in Thailand, the difference could be in the nervous systems and in the system itself, that they may be less fortunate those are the wrong terms.
Yeah.
Here's a side note, is I wrote that in an essay once when I was around 42, that I was hanging my laundry to dry because I was trying to be organic. And I said something about those less fortunate. And my teacher reamed me saying, just because you give your child a $50 toy and people in Africa don't give their kids toys at all, there's nothing about fortune in there. There's nothing about who's fortunate and who's not. He really, really reamed me. So the scenario that they have and the system that they have may be beneficial to them, so that they don't need as much focused, paid for self-care that we need after being on this treadmill, for however many years.
Yeah, well, a huge part of that, especially in Thailand and in rural Thailand, they live in a village and they live with their family. And, a lot of places in Asia, people sleep in the same room and whatever. So they have less of the individualistic storyline. Like, this is your space, this is my space, I need my own whatever, whoever said that, okay, like we all need our own kitchen. To me, it's absurd. Like you need this big, huge, large appliance, and you need this big stovetop, and one for you, one for you. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But so going back to what you're saying, yeah, self-care of the kind that we're talking about is almost it's almost irrelevant in that culture because it's an intact culture. It's what I would think of as an intact culture
Right.
versus the Margaret Thatcher society of individuals kind of culture.
Right. It's
Because
not breeding,
one,
it's not breeding this desperation.
exactly.
Okay, it's not breeding
And they
that. Yeah.
and they sit around and they touch each other and they massage each other and they don't have weird taboos about body and they're just like, you know, really affectionate naturally the way little kids are. They haven't lost that. And not only that, but they go to Buddhist temple, they have the monks, they have rituals that are built into their culture that they all participate in.
Yeah.
So they're not, you know, they're not desperate to like, where do I find meaning? Okay, I guess I'm gonna light some candles and like say some prayer. You know, like it's already all built in for them. And I'm not saying like, oh, you have to be Buddhist or this culture, you know, I'm just saying that this culture isn't better or worse. It's actually a culture at all, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I know. And so I'm bringing that up as a point of the whole self-care, fulfillment, and all of that. And it really ties into what we're trying to do here, that where we're trying to have a multi-generational homestead, you know, with Jordan, his wife, and their 2 kids living here. And, you know, I had a therapist at one point, like 6 months ago, and I felt like she chided me and she wanted to say something that was really bad about having my son move in with us. And I said, oh, you don't understand. We really want this. My son's lived in 35 different countries and he has seen this for 11 years, ever since he grew up. So we want to try it. But I'm telling you that I keep digging my heels in and I keep having a hard time because I think I'm all for the collective, but I'm obviously, you know, I'm a individualist person. If I don't get my time alone, you know what I mean? So there's so many issues that come along with a multi-generational home when you haven't had a model. Like Jordan's had a model. I haven't had a model. I haven't seen families like you've seen in Thailand. And I don't have very many friends whose kids and their children live with them for, you know, a long period of time. It's not part of our culture.
Of course, yeah. So we're trying to take a concept and create it out of thin air. I mean, I've lived in plenty of communes and the like, and there's always a lot of struggle and ego because it's a bunch of people coming from cultures that don't know how to do that.
Right.
And then I also want to, you know, insert the caveat that we don't necessarily know, you know, for instance, in a culture like Thailand, where there's, you know, in Asia in general, there's really strong Confucian history and philosophy that kind of like guides the way they socialize. So they're very collective focused, and there's a lot of positives to that, but there's also negatives too. Like it's a lot harder to have personal boundaries in cultures like that. So again, I'm not like glorifying that culture, you know, over another. And I'm not necessarily saying that having alone time or wanting to have alone time is good or bad. But what I'm saying is that they have an intact culture where there is a collective, there is an automatic collective ability to be in the same space, to be in shared space. You don't have to, you know, schedule 15 play dates or whatever to make it happen. And they touch each other. And so they're getting these very basic needs met. Basic needs to cook together, to sleep together, to physically be together, to physically touch one another.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the number one predictor of recovery from depression and anxiety is having a strong support network.
Like
and so
community.
Yeah, a community. Yeah. So, I mean, imagine all these people here and what I think of as like filing cabinets of, you know, apartment buildings and whatever, like one person in this little box, another person in this little box. No wonder we're not getting touched. We don't hear the voice of another person. We're not sharing meals together. Like these are all really, you know, ingrained in our biology. Like we evolved this way, you know?
Yeah. Well, part of our scenario right now is very fun. I mean, it's just enlivening and it's fulfilling a lot of those needs for me. And yet I'm shocked at how reticent I am and how hard it's been for me. But I do think that that we always qualify the whole self-care thing. I think that not putting a value judgment on individualist versus collective societies, not putting a value judgment, but each one's going to breed a different set of issues that you need to work through, I guess. I don't know.
Absolutely. I totally believe that too. Yeah. So I don't want to, sit over here and talk about this utopian culture that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah,
What I do want to talk about is basic human needs that some cultures meet and some don't.
yeah.
And us being in a position where we can make a choice to create something that takes the good, leaves the bad,
Yeah. And sometimes in this culture, in the more elite, privileged culture, the things that we want so desperately, we have to pay for them. We pay for massages, and we do pay for, like, if we want to go to Joann's Fabrics or whatever, wherever, and have a little quilting thing, you have to pay for any community thing that you're going to do.
Totally.
And that's part of it. But here in Santa Clarita, every time I talk to this woman, I break into tears. This baby, Achilles from Argentina, never got to be with anyone. He got here when he was 9 months old, and for like 8 months, he didn't get to be with anyone. And I found a group through a lady that I met at the duck thing, and she said, oh no, this lady started a SCV toddler group. So there's like 700 mothers of toddlers through Facebook, and it's completely free, and they do a co-op, and one woman does a lesson, or man, every day, every single day, and it's completely free.
Wow.
So people that want the community and want the interaction for their children, at least, and these mothers of toddlers, I mean, I haven't been around them in so long. They're so, like, I'm like, okay, come on, it's 10 o'clock. And they're just like, yeah, I'll start when I start. Yeah, I'm going to take my time setting up. And haven't been around it in so long that it's reminding me, of just that slow pace, and it's probably taking my blood pressure down a little. I don't know.
Yeah, let it do that.
Yeah.
Thailand did that for me. I've never been so grounded in my life as when I left Thailand and then moved to San Francisco and became completely ungrounded.
The ebb and flow of being grounded.
Yeah.
For me, I swear, it happens within hours in the day. Like, I can't keep track of when I'm feeling like I can do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. So anyway. All right, so what did we talk about? You want to wrap it up?
That is a great question. So basically, we're talking about fulfillment and happiness and the power of community in achieving that.
Yes, we kind of got off on community, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, but to me, it's no different, because I think creative community, like this Kin Weaver thing I was talking about, that's kind of the pinnacle to me. That's the creative self, so unabashed in being the creative self that you can be held in the community. You don't, have the critic. Like, we're not there to look good. We're not there to produce a painting that everyone says is good, right? We're there to be in community and create something out of the collective energy that's there.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? And that's a good thing about church, right? we're always talking about church. That is a good thing about church. People come together just to be together and just to share a meal. It's called fellowship in the church. So
yeah, and it's a beautiful idea, and no matter what the religion is, it's beautiful, and it's something that secular culture is it's slipping away from secular culture.
I feel that. And before we left, the big idea of church, that's what Jim's main concern was. He's like, that the whole community idea is just like, where will we have that? So now we just have such a big family. But what I love,
that's one way to do it.
What I love that happened tonight, is we wanted to talk about happiness and fulfillment, and we can interchange the word community and together. Those words, we can interchange those words. That it's a fascinating thing that they're interchangeable. That movie Happiness,
The Pursuit of Happiness?
No, it's a doc. Shad, who's that director? Shadyac, Tom Shadyac. I got it.
There you go. Nice.
Tom Shadyac. He got in an accident and he got hurt, and he's the one that did Jim Carrey and the Pet movie. Ace Ventura. Very famous, very, very successful on the go guy.
Right.
And he got in an accident, in a biking accident. He got hurt, and he just had all this time in the world to analyze happiness. So with all his money and everything, he sold everything he had. He moved into like a trailer, and he took cameramen, and he went all around the world seeking who's happy and who's not, and what is happiness. And we just hit the nose. We hit it on the nail. We hit the nail
Yeah.
on the head. It's togetherness. It's community.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And but it was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose.
No, totally. But that's great. I love it because
Okay.
it's spontaneous and it's real. So
Time for dinner now.
yeah,
Time
it
for
is.
your communal dinner. Okay. Mwah. Love you.
All right. Love you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.